Happy Wednesday. What a Wednesday it is. It is the time for the Imperfect Action live stream. If you're wondering what you're looking at, this is it. This is the Imperfect Action live stream. Who am I? I am Rob Fenstermaker, former corporate burnout survivor turned kingdom builder, your kingdom builder. I help get you out of the rut because sometimes when we're in life, going through life, and we're on this journey, we get thrown off, we get stuck in a rut, we don't know what to do. I get you out of the rut, I get you in action, I help you to bring clarity to what your life is, and I do this in my one-on-one coaching program. Before we start, I've got a couple of things I want to mention. A week from this Friday, I host my next virtual Friday whiskey hour. It's always a great time to come together and connect at the end of the week and just share some conversation. I also host the Iron Sharpens Iron community, which is every other Tuesday. We held that yesterday. We had a great conversation about how men need to take care of their children and how we need to create that next generation from them. Also want to share, next Thursday, I'm appearing at the Polarizing Network. I'm going to be speaking at that. Go ahead and show up to that. Just go ahead, get on LinkedIn, look for Polarizing Network. Go ahead and sign up for that. I would love to have you there and support me. But hey, it is time for the Imperfect Action live stream, and it is my honor to introduce Leigh-Leigh Kossman. Who is Leigh-Leigh? Leigh-Leigh empowers Christian mothers in transition whose children are leaving the nest so they can start looking for that next chapter in their life. Did I get that right? Did I say that right?
Yeah, next purposeful chapter. The next purposeful chapter.
Next purposeful chapter. I knew I missed something there. But Leigh-Leigh, I thank you for agreeing to appear on the Imperfect Action live stream. I know before we got on, you and I were talking. And it's about 2018, which I think is about right when you and I first connected. And I remember the first conversation we had, you and I had. And as everything you were saying, I'm like, check, I've done this. Because literally we're at pretty much the same life stage. We graduated high school at the same. I won't say what year it is because you never give away a woman's age. So I learned that.
I don't care.
My wife told me that. Two things you never ask a woman: her age and if she's pregnant.
Oh, true.
You know what? I'm going to be honest with you. Talk about imperfect. I was at the store one time, and I'm just trying to make chit chat with the woman. It was a Banana Republic. I'm just trying to make a little chit chat with the woman who was behind the counter, asking her, when's your baby due? And she's kind of replying to me. And as I'm walking out, I realized that woman wasn't pregnant. So I never ask a woman if she's pregnant.
No.
Unless you see that head emerging from the birth canal, you ask a woman if she is pregnant.
I saw a gal last week who was quite obviously pregnant, and I'm like, should I say something or not? Like, right?
Well, women can get away with it, can't they? Can't women get away with it more than men?
I don't know, but because same thing. If they're not, then you're like, oh. But this gal was indeed, it looked like it, and she was, so that was good. And then it was a nice conversation about, is this your first baby? No, it was her fourth, which is so amazing. That's so cool.
Oh,
yeah, and she was young. I'm like, that's why I asked if it was her first one. I don't know, but looks are deceiving. She could have been like 35 or something, But anyway, fourth baby, what a blessing. I have three. I have three beautiful daughters. My husband and I have three beautiful girls.
Because I've been married to my wife about as long as you've been married to your husband, as I recall. We've been married about the same length of time.
Yep.
Our children are almost the same age because you got twins and an older one. So I have an older daughter and a son.
Yeah.
And they're literally about the same age.
Yeah.
So there's so much symmetry here.
I know. And I love veterans, and you're a veteran. So even though I'm not, I have a heart for our military. So that was one thing, Rob, that's like right away stuck out to me. So thank you again for your service.
Well, thank you. But it's I like to say, that it's one of those things. Our veteran community needs a lot of help right now. There's just, and it needs a lot of support. And if we're going to send our young men and women overseas to fight these never-ending wars, we better damn well take care of them when they get home.
Amen.
And that's 100% what I believe. We have to take better care of our veterans community.
We do.
So, having said that. So, I know you kind of you call yourself a Christian speaker, correct? That would be and you've said you've spoken pretty much your entire life about your life.
I have been in front of audiences forever because I'm a singer, and I've also been on stage in plays and musicals. I've been a youth leader. My husband and I were youth leaders for 13 years while our kids were growing up. And so I'm used to being in that. Well, and I teach voice. So I'm also like teaching and coaching and being in front of people kind of all my life. And I love it because I realized at a point that God had prepared me that, you know, even though not all of those arenas were Christian, some are. I have led worship, I have preached, you know, but some of them were secular. But I know that God has just lined things up to put me where I am so that I can shine his light and do his work now in this context as a Christian speaker to those moms whose kids are leaving the nest and they perhaps find themselves not knowing what to do next. That's extremely purposeful because they've poured their heart and soul into those kiddos and the nerve of them to leave the nest. You know?
What are they thinking? Leaving the house.
I know.
My wife and I, we were fairly young empty nesters because, you know, we got married fairly young. We had children. We actually, our plan was to wait to have children. And we had to get a babysitter for our first anniversary we went out. So
love it.
So much for the plans of mice and men, you know,
yeah,
best laid plans that don't ever come to fruition. But no, our children, they're thriving, you know, and I think the biggest responsibility for parents, and this is how I treated my children. I think the biggest responsibility we have as parents is not to be their best bud, but our biggest responsibility is to raise quality adults. And I think my wife and I, we check that box pretty well.
Yeah, I think my husband and I did too. Our kids are exemplary. We are so proud of them, and they are just fantastic people. And I do believe that you're correct. And encouragement to all the moms and dads out there. Yeah, you're not there to be their best friend. You are there to raise them. And when they're old enough, then when they're out of the house, then you can be their best friend, which we are with our kids. But yeah, you have to be the parent. You have to assume that role because they need that. If you're not the parent, who's going to parent these kids? It's your job.
Yeah. And I guess the advice I would give to those parents, especially when you have those teenagers, they're listening to you, even though you say something or roll your eyes like, Dad, whatever. I would tell my, you know, especially my daughter, because she's too much like me. She can be too headstrong. And I would just tell her these things all through her, you know, teenage years. And she would just kind of, okay, whatever, Dad, whatever. And then you finally get that day when she comes to me and will say, hey, Dad, I got a great idea. Well, really, what is it? And she'll say, I want to do this. And it's something you've been telling her for the last 4 years. Like, oh, that's amazing. How did you ever think of that?
Yeah.
That's amazing. I don't know how you did that, but go for it and just plug on. But my advice to parents is they are listening and they are watching. So be very cognizant of that. And you mentioned mothers, you know, with that identity. I kind of, we're both working in that same sphere, not with me with mothers, but me with men, because I think one thing that men do to a fault, a lot of men, and I've done this myself, is we really wrap our identity around that 9 to 5. That's who we are. You go to a cocktail party or you go to a ball game, and what's the first thing you ask them? Hey, what do you do? It's around that 9 to 5. I've been through 3 corporate downsizings, and when that 9 to 5 gets pulled out from under you, you really struggle. I know the first time it happened, it took me a good 3 years to really move past that and figure out what it is I wanted to do, because I just jumped right back into that position that was okay, but I wasn't crazy about it, and it just didn't work out. Downsizing number 2 comes along. You think I would have learned something about that, but I'm a glutton for punishment. I had to go for it again until downsizing 3 comes along. And that's when I said, you know what, enough is enough. But women, yes, I've seen so many women, they wrap their identity around their children. That's who they are, is their children. And when those children leave the home, leave the nest, they're lost. And I've even seen some women take it to the level they won't let those children leave the home. They won't let them leave the nest, and they retard the growth of that child becoming an adult.
Yeah, can't do that. No. You can't do that. When our kids were growing up, I did have hobbies of my own. I was involved in the junior women's club in town. We live in a very small town. My husband and I did a ton of volunteering at church. And I had my own. I was a singer, and I taught voice since our first child was 1 year old. So I've taught voice for 28 and a half years, and I had my own hobbies. I had my own things. I think there's a danger as a parent in letting your kids think that the whole world revolves around them. Your world revolves around your kids, but you don't want you hope it does for most parents, but you don't want them to think that the whole world is going to be all wrapped up in what they're about. My mom and dad kind of taught me that. They're like, we want to celebrate and you're our everything, but the world's not going to think that when you leave, So I tried to have a balance of being with them. I was not a helicopter parent. I was an at-home mom because it was important to me to do that.
Yeah.
A lot of sacrifices for us to do that. But I think it's important for the moms to know, yes, it's okay to have your own hobby. It's okay to have your own thing. I always put my husband and my kids first. But the thing for me was then all of a sudden, I really literally didn't think about what's going to happen when they leave home. And I wanted them to leave home. We've encouraged all of our kids to go away to college, move to wherever you want to in the nation, and they have, which is good because it's their life and they need to, it's for them. It's not for me, it's for them. And so what happened then for me was, all of a sudden, there's 5 years between our kids. We had a lot of medical issues, and I had some near deaths in there, and it was a little treacherous to get our kids here safely for all of us. But as our first got into college, there were 5 years between them. So then the twins were in 8th grade when Josie was in college starting. So I'm like, okay, we still have a few years here, And then as she was advancing through college, and they're getting into the high school years, I was like, because I had things to do, Rob. Yes. But the things that, and people would say to me, well, what are you so frustrated about? You're a youth leader. You teach voice. You're a singer. You're blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, but those things fill my watch and my calendar, and those things don't fill my heart. And I've got 3 holes that were left when our kids left. I mean, it could just about make me cry because you just love them so much.
Yeah.
So you have to find something, mamas and dads, when your kids leave, that is fulfilling. And for me, that only comes through a Christian purpose. And I believe that God gives all of us gifts. We are all so unique and so special. And when you and I met in our coaching program, that was one of the things that I was really passionate about. Was I wanted people to know how special and unique they are. Every single one of us is different on purpose. It would be so stinking boring if we were all the same in any aspect. So I think the key is when you're looking for that next thing, when you're looking for fulfillment, you're looking for purpose, think about what lights you up. Think about what comes easy. Yes, tune into God's voice. Try to hear and pay attention to the clues, pay attention to the signs as to where you might find your fulfillment and something that's going to fill your heart. Now, granted, nothing's going to fill your heart like those kids do, but you have to be able to do something with your time besides cry after they leave. So, and you want it to be fulfilling. So you do need to tune in. Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing that when my children got into high school, I just said, I don't care what you get involved in high school. You have to get involved in something. I don't care what it is. And I just said, for me, it was sports when I was in high school. For my wife, it was primarily sports. And my son, what he gravitated towards was marching band. And how he got musical, I don't know. I've only ever played one instrument in my life, and that was when I was 9 years old. I took 9 months of learning lessons of how to play an accordion.
Love it.
That's the extent. That's the extent of my musical expertise. And I'm not even. That wasn't even an expertise. My wife has none. And then my daughter got involved in sports. She got involved in a couple other things, drama, that type of stuff. But I just told him, you got to get involved in something. I don't care what it is. Just do something. Pick something. Something that that excites you. Something you're excited about. Don't feel that you have to do it just because your mom and dad want you to do it. And I've seen plenty, like I said, I've gone to plenty of these, little league games or youth sports events, And some of these kids out there, they are miserable because mom or dad is forcing them to play baseball or soccer, or whatever it is. And that's not what they want to do. And they're forcing them. You can see it on these kids. They're just miserable. But the cool thing about children is just let them be children. They go through different stages. Let them figure it out. Let them figure life out.
Yep.
And and you talk about tuning into God's voice. And I think that's really what God wants us to do. He wants us to get things figured out in our life. Because prayer is powerful. I mean, I know you're a praying woman. I will pray. I'm not as diligent in my prayer as I need to be, but prayer is powerful. But what God, I think, is also calling us to do is figure it out with action steps. We can pray and pray and pray and pray, but we need to do something as well. We need to take some type of action, deeds, whatever you want to call it. We do need to take some action.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a huge prayer, as you said. I think that it's really important to make the time every day to commune with God, to have your quiet time with God, whether that's reading a devotion book and some scripture or having meditation time, having just some quiet time. We have to be still. There's an actress whose name is Priscilla Shirer, and she's an actress and a Christian speaker. And I was watching one of her videos one day, and her husband was on with her, and he said, we make time in our lives for the things we want. If you want to hear God's voice, make time to hear God's voice. And I think ever since then, I've been even more diligent in it. And I think you're right, Rob, with the action. You have to plug in. So whether that means just being aware and looking and listening, I think a lot of times people don't know where they're hearing God's voice or how to hear God's voice. And I will tell you that it comes to us in so many avenues. It can come to you on a billboard. It can come to you in a song. I had this great experience this morning. So last week I was in a meeting and they threw out a little icebreaker question, just random. If you had to listen to only one song for the rest of your life, what would it be? Well, as a singer, I love all kinds of music. I love all genres, but the first one in my head was I Can Only Imagine by Mercy Me, which is about when you die and you go to heaven and you see Jesus for the first time. Like, oh my goodness, like what's that going to be like? That was the first song. Now, it's been around for probably 15 years and it's not played on the radio very much at all. But I knew for sure that God was going to send me an affirmation like, I heard you say that. Guess what? This morning, I'm getting ready, putting makeup on, all that, had some prayer time with God, the Christian radio station. Shout out to WBGL. You can get it on the app, WBGL. Love it, Contemporary Christian. I heard Mercy Me, I Can Only Imagine. And I know that was God saying, I hear you. I'm hearing you all day, every day, no matter what you're doing. I'm listening to you and I'm here. So anyway, it can come to you in song lyrics. About a year ago, one of our daughters, Lily, and I were in a car and we were talking about my dad who passed in November of 2022. So it had been like only 6 months or so since he had died. And we were talking about my dad and just like really missing him. And we got stopped by a commuter train. And there was a car in front of us. Guess what the initials on that license plate were? NMS, my father's initials. So, I mean, those are signs that there are spirits and God all around us all the time. And conversation. Sometimes you're thinking about something, you have something on your mind. Maybe it's like, oh, I want to try this in life, or maybe God's leading me here. And then all of a sudden, one of your friends says, I think you should do this, or have you thought about that? So it can come, our signs from God come in so many ways. And of course, can I tell you my biggest sign from God?
Go ahead.
It's pennies. It's pennies. When I was pennies.
Okay.
Now we're becoming kind of a cashless society, but I'll tell you how I find them now. So when I was in college, I called home crying about something, and my mom said, well, pray about it. And I said, well, I have been praying. And she said, well, God hears you. And I said, I don't think so. Like, nothing's turning around. Nothing is changing. I don't feel any differently. And my mom said, God will send you a sign. When next time you leave your dorm, I want you to look for pennies. You're going to find a penny. And that penny doesn't have to be heads up, is sent to you by God's messengers. And God is saying, I hear you. I'm with you. Everything is going to be okay. So I was probably 19 years old. The rest of my life, I would find pennies in the craziest places, like at a time when I was really praying hard and really needed to know God was listening. And so I would tell my friends, and then they would come back and they would tell me, oh, guess what? I was praying and I found a penny, just like you said. So years go by, and as a youth leader, we would take our kids to lots of different conventions and gatherings, and I would talk with other youth leaders. And one time we were talking about signs from God and signs from heaven, and one person would say, oh, mine's a feather, mine's a butterfly, blah, blah, blah. And somebody said, well, when my uncle died, I found a dime. And then somebody else said to me when I'm relaying the penny stories, well, when my grandpa died, I didn't find a penny, but I found a dime. So this went on, like probably 4 people told me about dimes. And I thought, what's the significance here? Dimes. And then I thought, dimes from the deceased. So now, if you're thinking about one of your loved ones, you might find a dime. Just be aware that is your loved one saying, yeah. So I have pennies and dimes. Now, my dad's favorite numbers were 2 and 5. And after he died, my mom and I were coming from ordering his flowers. And then we'd gone to Walmart and we're getting some groceries. We came out of Walmart. It was dusky. And I looked down. I was thinking that's a penny. No, it was a quarter. So now my dad's sign to me, 2-5, is a quarter. So pay attention to those. Those are your loved ones.
I agree. I don't believe in circumstances. Things happen for a reason. I absolutely believe that. And I've had those experiences happen to me as well. One that I'll never forget. I'll go ahead and share this. One that I will never ever forget was when my son was he would have been 5 months old. He was on life support. He's in the PICU at Columbus Children's Hospital.
Oh my!
He had been on it. Well, he hadn't. No, I take that back. He had not gone on life support yet. This was right before he went on life support. But he was trending that way. And so he was in the PICU. And so my wife had to go out and do something with our daughter. I was the only one there in the hospital. And, the nurses came in to ask, do you want a break? I'm like, all right. So I just went down to the first floor of the lobby to the little shopette there. I just wanted to get a candy bar. I was hungry. I hadn't had any lunch. So I walk up to to where the candy bar's at. And there's this guy sitting off to the right, just kind of standing there, just, like this, kind of looking at me. He's like, how are you doing? I'm like, I'm doing fine. So I get my candy bar, literally grab my candy bar, walk over, pay for it, and then walk to the elevator. The elevator door opens. There's the same guy. How's it doing? How are you doing? And I'm like, all right, I'm going to engage him in this conversation now and just share with him how I was doing. His name was Doug Llewellyn. He was, he was talking to me about, just life in general. Shared with me his daughter's names, Faith and Hope. Okay.
Wow.
So, he just kind of gave me that inspiration I needed in that moment. As my son, like I said, later that day is when he was going to be he was going to get on life support. We didn't know it at that point, but it was trending that way. So just things like that. That was not circumstantial. That was ordained. There was something ordained about that because I needed to hear that message in that moment.
Yeah. Praise the Lord.
One of those things. It's one of those things I will never forget. And I've shared that with several people, and so they can. If you're hearing this, you can doubt it, but I'm going to tell you right now, this happened. This 100% happened, and there's a reason that happened. And maybe I still don't understand what the reason is, but there's a reason that happened, and that obviously made me aware at that point in time. My son, then, like I said, later that night was put on life support. He was on life support for 37 days, and the experiences that we had during that time, as dark as it was, were some of the best experiences I've ever had. I will never forget some of those things that happened during those 37 days.
100%. Yeah.
Yep.
The Lord is all over every situation. I hear people say things happen for a reason. I'm not sure that I believe it that way.
Yeah.
And people say, well, God won't give you more than you can handle. I prefer to look at all of it this way. Um,
Yeah.
Things are allowed. God
Yeah.
allows things to happen. Sometimes bad things happen. We live on earth. This is a sinful
Mhm.
planet. This is not
Mhm.
our permanent home. And it's awful when bad things happen. It's terrible.
Yeah.
But I also
Yeah.
know from my decades of experience that you can always find the good in every situation, in
Oh, yeah.
even in
Absolutely.
a death. A
Absolutely.
friend of
Absolutely.
mine just lost her husband, and she said, when I married Keith, I didn't want to come out to a small town. I told him I'd never move out to a small town, and the town's about 2,000. It's one of my neighboring towns. My town's about 2,000. Shout out Hinckley,
Yeah.
Illinois. And my friend said,
Hinkley. You said Hinkley? Hinkley?
Hinckley, yeah, Hinckley.
Hinkley. There's a Hinkley in Ohio. And
Yes.
their big claim to fame in Hinkley, Ohio is, I don't know what day it is, sometime in March. If you're out there in Ohio, you know what I'm talking about, is when the Buzzards return to Hinkley. And
Yes.
it's the same day every year.
I had heard that. Well, we don't have that.
Yeah.
But my friend in a neighboring small town has a lot of friends. And she said,
Okay.
because her husband's death was, he was only 70 and it was not expected. And she said, the outpouring of love is huge. And I am so happy that I moved out here and that we've raised our voice here. So there are messengers all over the place speaking like Doug Llewellyn did to you, Rob, in that time when your son was in such dire straits. We have messengers, we have angels, we have signs. And I do just want to encourage anyone who's going through a hard time right now or who's had tragedy. There's a lot of tragedy. Know that you are loved. Know that God is with you. And at some point, probably after the tragedy the sting has gone out, I know you'll be able to look back and see God's love in people who've been there for you and in things that have happened. Like you say, there are no coincidences. God is everywhere. And all we have to do is plug in.
He is. He is. You know what else is not a coincidence? Can I share you something else is not a coincidence?
What?
The virtual Friday whiskey hour, which will appear a week from this Friday. That is not a coincidence because that is going to happen. The Iron Sharpen Artists community. That is not a coincidence because it is going to happen. The Polarizing Network next Thursday. That is not a coincidence because that is going to happen. Sorry, I had to do my shameless plugs there. So
quite all right. I'm writing them down.
So we all have this power within us. We have the things within us to turn things around. But like I shared, people get stuck in that rut. I love getting people out of the rut. I used to be somebody who was stuck in the rut. I just couldn't get out of my own way. And once I finally got out of that rut and realized what opportunity I have and able to do some things, that's when everything turned around for me. So let's when you think about the personal power that we have to turn things around in our life, as far as the women that you love to work with, that Sissy and Junior are leaving home. They're flying the nest. They got their first big boy and big girl job, and they're dating, and they're probably going to be married pretty soon. What are things that you want to share with them?
To the moms?
Yeah,
and
to
the
those
dad.
moms
And the
and the
dad.
dads.
That's right.
Yeah.
Is that you are capable, you are able, and you are worthy of making the changes in your life that you need to make in order to feel happy and to have life satisfaction and to feel fulfilled. I think a lot of times people feel like they're not worth it. Like, oh, I shouldn't do this, or I shouldn't do that, or oh, that's maybe they think it's selfish to try to follow a path that's about them. Because when you're a parent, very often you're living your life for your children. They are your first priority. But once they can stand on their own 2 feet, and they do, then you have more time to think about using the gifts that God has given you and taking action, kind of plugging in. I like, Rob, that you talk about imperfect action, because most definitely when we set out to do things, we probably aren't going to do them 100%
No.
right the first time or the second or the
Yeah.
third. And it's all a journey. It's about growth. It's intimidating. It's hard to make mistakes. And that's why I think people are afraid to venture out and try things, because they don't want to make a mistake. They don't want to be wrong. They have a fear of the unknown. What will happen if I make a mistake, or what will happen if I'm successful? So I like your imperfect action because it's not always going to be perfect. And I have to say that when you're following God's call, or when you're using your gifts and you're wanting to have purpose, if you feel like you can lick it all by yourself, you don't need God, do you? And I think it's better to walk with your hand in God's. God's ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. And he can see way down the road that we cannot see. So we have to trust. We have to walk with him. When God called me to youth leadership, I remember saying to one of my Christian girlfriends, shout out, Monk, if you're listening. I said, I'm a little bit afraid to do this. I've never been a youth leader before, and and my husband said he would do it with me when God called me. So I said, I'm a little bit nervous. And she said, that's okay. God wants you to be a little bit nervous, because if you could handle it all by yourself, you would not need him. Yeah. So I encourage everybody to step out in faith, step out on that shaky foot when you're not sure what's going to happen and what's going to happen the next step and the next step and the next step. God will open doors for you. And if you find that a door isn't open, it's not an automatic forget about it, don't do this.
No.
It might just be take a pause.
It's not now.
Breath,
not now.
Rethink, right, or not now. Exactly.
Not now, but maybe later.
Yep. I have a sign. God answers prayers in like a little sign on the wall, not a sign from God, but a sign that says, God answers prayers in 3 ways. Yes, no, or you've got to be kidding me. So when a door closes, you have to decide which one of those answers God's giving you.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, I did youth work as well. I think my wife and I think we did it for 15 years. The one reason I had to step away, because I realized we were getting older and these kids kept staying the same age. Like, wait a minute, this isn't working out here. So, but there was one thing I'd always, we worked with that age group 12 to 14, which I thought was kind of a fun age. The boys were totally ADD and the girls didn't care about the boys yet. But I would always have this at one point during the year we'd work with them. I would always say this to them. As I said, here, I'd ask how old they were. So they're always, like 12 to 14 years in that age. All right. So here's what's going to happen in the next 8 years of your life. Some of you are going to get through. I said, most of you are going to probably get through high school. Some of you are going to go on to college. Some of you are going to get married. Some of you are going to have a child. And I just kind of went through all these things that are going to happen, in your late teens and your early 20s. And they'd all kind of look at me dumbfounded. And some of them didn't believe me. I'm like, trust me, this is what's coming. This is what's coming your way. And I will also share that with some of the parents, and the parents to get a little like, ooh, yeah, I guess you're right. This is going to happen. But you always have to be aware and in tune, because those years that from 12 years old to 30 years old, those are the most formative years of everybody's life, really, of everything you are going to do with your life. Those are the most formative years. And I would even maybe earlier than 30, because, at least it's been my experience that the friends you make in your late teens into your 20s. As you get older, you make friends. It's just not as easy to make friends, it seems like, because people have kind of gone on with their life. They're doing their own thing. But my wife and I, we're now at this stage of our life where other people are at that same stage. So it seems like it's a little easier to make friends now. It's just, life is so cyclical.
It is.
And you just got to be willing to go with the flow sometimes. And like you said here, you got to own it. You got to own what life is dealing you.
Yeah, I think that's hard for some people. I think it's hard for a lot of people. I was reading Jack Canfield's Success Principles book, which is really awesome. The very first principle in his Success Principles is you have to take full responsibility for your life, period.
Yeah.
good,
Yes.
bad,
Yeah.
the stuff you've liked, the
Yeah.
stuff you haven't, the stuff that turned out, the stuff that didn't turn out. And whoa, that's pretty big. You have to take responsibility.
Mhm.
So yeah, you got to own it. Hey, we all make mistakes. And
Mhm.
mamas, I want to tell you, it's so hard to be a mom. I can't speak for the dads. I'm sure it's every bit as hard. But I want to encourage you, moms. You're doing a great job. And we
Yeah.
all make mistakes. We all look back and go, oh, I shouldn't have said that, or I shouldn't have done it that way. Something that we learned in coaching, Rob, you and I, with Lumia, shout out to Lumia, is that every person in any moment is doing the absolute best that they can. I have to qualify that with I've heard some people who are abuse survivors, and one person said, "I don't agree with that at all. That was not the best that person could do." And that's a conversation for a therapist, and I'm not a therapist, but
It is. Yeah. We're not therapists. No, I agree.
no, you're doing the best you can, mamas and dads, and kids, if there are kids listening, Josie, Annie, Lily, my darlings, if you guys are listening, know that your parents are always everything that's done is done from the best place with the best
Mhm.
intention in mind and with your
Yeah.
welfare at heart. So anybody's kids, if you're listening, or even if you're an adult and you're struggling with perhaps your past with a parent,
Yeah.
know that you were loved, they were doing the
Yeah.
best they could, and hopefully there's less of that and more of,
Yeah.
thankfulness for having the parents that we all had. I loved
Yeah.
mine. They were fantastic. My mom
Yeah.
is still living. She's a crazy woman. She's a
This Sunday
redheaded
is Mother's Day.
That's
This
right,
Sunday is
redheaded
Mother's Day. You know,
fire.
my wife and I, we've always had this ongoing debate. She's like, "What are you getting me for Mother's Day?" I'm like, "You're my mother." She's like, "Well, I'm the mother of your children." I'm like, "All right, you got me. All right, you got me."
That's
So,
right.
but yeah, no, my mother lives down here. We're in Florida with us, so we are taking her up to St. Petersburg to a place called the Hangar for Sunday brunch. Her and my dad, uh, and uh, so yeah, there you go. That's what we're doing for Mother's Day.
That's good.
Now, sadly, my wife, my mother-in-law, my wife's mother, um, she is well along with Alzheimer's.
Mm,
So, and it's Mother's Day is one of those days that you're right that maybe some people don't have that great relationship with their mother,
right.
or maybe what's going on with my wife. But my wife had an amazing relationship with her mother, and she's just a shell of who she was. But what we can remember are the times that we had with her. And yes, this time we're going through now with her, yeah, it sucks. But that's just part of life. Life's going to happen. That's a guarantee. Life is going to happen. There's no guarantees in life. I guess the only guarantee is with life is that one day you're born and one day you're going to die. That's it.
Yeah, that's right. And
That's
Rob,
it.
thanks for bringing that up because it kind of points back to you've got to own it. And it goes back to my saying that you are able, capable, and worthy of making change. Life is
Hmm.
going to happen. You are going to struggle. You are going to be at a point where you don't know where to turn next. But reach within, pray, look for the signs, and know that you can. That
Hmm.
God wants all of us to live fruitful, happy lives. We are given
Yeah.
great gifts, and when we use those gifts, we step into more life satisfaction, and
Hmm.
life tends to go a lot smoother. One day, I was having a conversation with my mom. She's such a good gift giver, and she's very thoughtful, and she's so complimentary of everybody, like every stranger in every elevator, every clerk in a store. She's so quick to find the good in them and just compliment them right out loud. And I said something, we were talking about purpose, and she said, well, I don't really have any gifts. I said, Mama, yes, you do. You are so loving and so sweet. Well, that's not hard to do. I only do that because it's easy. And I said, well, that's how we use our gifts. Our gifts are
Yeah.
the things that come easy to us. So to all
Yeah.
of you mamas who are looking for that next chapter, think about what you love doing, or think about when you
Yeah.
were a kid. What did you love when you were a kid? What lit you
Yeah.
up? What could you tap back into from an adult perspective
Yeah.
that would be fulfilling and that would give you new purpose?
Yeah. And loving is a gift because I have definitely been around some miserable people. They're not loving people. And you talked about you got to own it. You got to take ownership because we live in a victim society right now. Everybody's got to be a victim. I was wrong. I was wrong. I was a victim. I was a victim. And they use that as an excuse that I can't do it because I've got to blame, I got to blame the situation. I got to blame society. I got to blame my parents. When you're blaming, all you're doing is being lazy and making excuses. That's it. I say grab your oar and get in your boat. And that oar
Mhm.
is ownership, accountability, and responsibility. And use that oar to start moving forward in life. Get on the waters of life. Yes, there's going to be storms when you get on the waters, but a boat was not made to sit in a harbor. A ship was not made to sit in a harbor. It was made to get out on the waters. And
Amen.
that's where we experience life.
That's absolutely right. And when you think about the way you feel as a victim versus the way you feel when you're empowered or when you feel like you can make some change, night and day. Night and
Yeah.
day difference. And yeah,
Yeah.
and then you're not the person who's spreading poison. Everything
Yeah.
starts with the self. I tell my
Yeah.
clients this, I tell my audiences this. Everything starts here with us. It's what you just
Yeah.
said. It's what Jack Canfield said. Take responsibility, be
Hmm.
accountable. It all starts here, and we have to be aware of what we're putting out. What
Yeah.
Because from the self, it ripples and it emanates and it affects so many people. So we do have to be
Yes.
aware.
To circle back to your music, I love music. I'm not a musician, but I do love music. One of my favorite bands to listen to is Pink Floyd. One of the greatest lines of any song, which describes the victim versus the victor mindset in the song Wish You Were Here. Did you exchange a walk on part in the war for a lead role in a cage? Victims want to be that lead role in a cage.
Oh, wow.
Victors want to accept that walk on part in the war because you don't know what life is going to deal, but you're willing to engage life. Victims just want to sit back and just feel like they're comfortable, even though they are miserable. They want to sit in that cage and not do anything with their life.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And you can, again, you can step out. You can step out in faith. You can step out on a shaky foot and not
Yeah,
know what's going to come next. But good things happen when you take action, even when it's
they do.
imperfect, especially if it's imperfect.
And you know what? Taking action, yes, there's no guarantee you're not going to fail. But if you want to be successful, if you want success in life, failure is part of success. It's 100% part of success.
Yes. And
It's
also
part of it.
something, failure is data.
Oh,
Failure,
yeah.
look at
Yes.
it as data. What did you learn? What did you learn? Not everything is all gloom and doom if something doesn't turn out right. Just take a step back, take a breath and say, okay, it didn't turn out like I wanted, or that wasn't quite what I thought would happen. But what did I learn? And I always say,
Yeah.
if you learn one thing from every experience, when I was young and used to go to seminars when I was working before I stopped to be an at-home mom, I would go to these
Yeah.
seminars, my work would send me. And you'd spend the whole day at these seminars. And I remember thinking, hey, if I bring back one thing that I can apply,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
successful day. So
Yeah.
like that
I've
with
done
everything.
that too. I've
Hmm?
done some of those seminars too, and it's like you're trying to take a drink out of a fire hydrant, but
Right.
you got to find one or two nuggets you can hang on to.
Yeah.
So I know you do a lot of speaking. What's your favorite type of groups to speak in front of?
Well, I love to speak with Christian moms who are in
Okay.
transition. Of course,
Okay.
as a mom, your whole life is transition. I mean, no day is ever the same. Your kids are growing and changing, and the dynamics change. So, but those Christian moms who are facing an empty nest or
Yeah.
whose kids are maybe entering junior high and high school, and they have the forethought, unlike me, to think about what comes next once they actually leave home. But I
Yeah.
also do talk to businesses and I talk to
Okay.
organizations. I speak in schools about these are my two popular keynotes right now. One is called Overcome the Overwhelm because our world is
Mm,
so overwhelmed. There's hardly a person who's not
yeah.
overwhelmed. And the other one is Energy Impact, how your energy influences yourself, business, and beyond.
Yeah. Yeah. That overwhelm could. Yeah. That could be crippling. And years ago, I used to be that one that was overwhelmed, and I realized I just had too much stuff on my plate, and and I just realized I got to take stuff off my plate. And some of the stuff I took off was actually good, but maybe it just wasn't serving me in that point in time. So I really, just kind of kept it to 3 to 5 main things. I mean, 3 to 5 things. That's the ideal number for me. And I've heard studies that's the ideal number, 3 to 5 things. The other thing I did, I turned off the I turned off the news. Corporate media.
Oh yeah.
No, I can't watch it because we're just getting played. And the cynic in me says, we're just getting played because it's nothing new. All they want to do is get you spun up and excited to do something. And I have completely turned off all news. I know what's going on in the world. I'm not naive.
And the cynic in me agrees with you.
What's that?
The cynic in me agrees with you. I don't watch the news either.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people came to that realization when the pandemic happened. We were told a lie. 15 days to flatten the curve. I'm never going to let them forget that. 15 days to flatten the curve, and we're still there's still people that want to keep, what happened during the pandemic. And yes, I called it a pandemic, people, to keep us, keep us down. And but I think the human spirit is alive. And I think people like you and me, we embrace that human spirit. We want to pull that spirit out of other people to become that leader that they want to be. They're just not clear on what it is they want to do. Getting clarity on that mission in life. That's something that when I work with my clients, that's what we do. Because I think the first thing that's most important is you got to know your truths. You got to know what it is you believe. Don't just believe something because everybody else believes it. Believe it because you know it to be true in your life. That's your foundation. Because once you have that foundation, then you can start taking those action steps and get clear on what it is you want to do.
Yeah, I like that you said that, Rob, what your truth is, because we need to learn to listen to our gut.
Yeah.
And when you have a little, like a niggling or a little feeling like, do this or do that, or maybe that's not the right thing, or maybe that didn't sound right, that doesn't feel right. Trust your gut. For me, my intuition, my gut is the Holy Spirit. It leads me. And we all are given the gift of intuition. We just don't all know how to tap into it. And I'll tell you, one of my tricks that I learned is I was realizing all of these quote unquote coincidences, like thinking of I Can Only Imagine, that song that's 15 years old, and then a few days later it's on the radio. Those kinds of things would happen to me a lot. And I finally couldn't realize a pattern. So I took out my beloved yellow legal pad that I use for everything. And I started writing down what happened, the circumstances, the day, the time, to see if God had a pattern here. I'm like, God, what are you trying to tell me? Like this incident and that incident and all these things that were crazy. And I had 2 full pages of things that had happened. And I realized in looking at them, there was no pattern. So for me, the message that God gave me was trust your gut.
Yeah.
I'm talking to you, trust your gut. When you think of something in a certain way that you haven't thought of before, keep going on that track. You're probably on the right track. Trust your gut. And of course, as a life coach, I am certainly happy to work with anyone who wants to know more about any of these things and learn how to tap into the Holy Spirit, how to trust your gut, how to look for signs and find signs. And I forgot to tell you how I find pennies now that aren't physical pennies. So I love numbers. I've always kind of loved like, ooh, that person has a cool phone number or a cool zip code or whatever. I just like numbers. And I was telling my girlfriend, hey, Kristen, if you're listening, that, gosh, I wasn't finding as many pennies, but I was having all these weird number things on my cell phone. Like I would look at the phone and it would be 1201 or 321 or 741. And I went on with a few numbers and she looked at me, she goes, Leigh-Leigh, that's God giving you digital pennies. So now instead of those 01s being on the ground, which are rare, we do find pennies once in a while now, but I get them on my cell phone. And I also think that I see like 1234, 1, 2, 3, 4, then I'm like, oh, thanks God, that's a little affirmation. Or, my dad's favorite number's 2, 5, and he liked 7.
Yeah.
So, then, oh, thanks, Daddy. That's a little wink from him. There are so many ways that we can tap into God and the other side. They're talking.
Oh, it is the study of numerology. I mean, I love it because there's so much power in numbers. And if you're a student of the Bible, which I am, there's a lot of numbers that are applicable. The number 6, the number 7, the number 3, the number 12, the number 40. They all have specific significance that, there's significance with those numbers.
Yep, absolutely.
Very much significance. So this is your website. If people want to check out more about who you are and what it is you do, if they want to reach you, they can reach out to you direct. So when people reach out to you, I mean, I'm assuming you offer an opportunity for them to get on a call with you.
Absolutely. Yes. I have a free half-hour consultation call that we can talk about life coaching to see if it is a fit for you. Also, of course, if your church or your ladies group or an organization that you're in has a need for a Christian speaker, I'm your woman. Or if in a secular sense, if your business is having trouble with morale or energy or overwhelm, or your school or your organization, your business, I can speak, would love the opportunity to come and speak. Yeah. And if you email me at love@leigh-leigh-kossman.com, I will mention Rob's podcast here, the Imperfect Action live stream, and I will send you a balance wheel, which is a tool to assess where you're spending your time right now. Because if you feel overwhelmed and out of balance, perhaps you're trying to figure out what your next step is, but you don't even know where you're putting your time. This can help you have a bird's eye view to figure out kind of what's going on, just from an overall assessment.
I've done those things similar before, and you kind of number it out. And I remember the first time I did it, my wheel was like this. It wasn't even that wheel wouldn't even roll down the street is how unround that wheel was. So it gives you a perspective because I mean, where your attention goes, that's where it is. And that's where your focus needs to be. And it was explained best to me by I just was listening to an interview of a race car driver. And he mentioned that, when you lose control of the car, you want to keep your focus down the track, because even when your car's spinning out of control, you want to make certain your focus is down the track and not looking at the wall. If you're looking at that wall, you're going in the wall. If you're looking down the track, you have a better chance of steering out of it and going straight ahead. And it's the same with life. If you're focused on, what can go wrong, you know what, it's going to go wrong. Focus on what it is you want to do, that clarity piece. And that's what I help people to work with me, and you do it as well. Create that clarity in your life. And that, I like to say, that becomes your main thing. Keep your main thing as your main thing. And if you know your main thing and you keep your main thing as your main thing, you're always going to be focused on your main thing.
I like that. That's good. For sure.
Yes.
Yeah. So sorry, I forgot to say then, if you go to my website, which is leigh-leigh-kossman.com, you will see a tab that says connect, and you can schedule a call with me. And there's a speaker tab as well if you're interested in having me come speak, which I would love to.
Okay. I'm sure it would be an amazing speech. Yes, if you're ever in South Florida and you're speaking down here, I'll have to stop by, even if it's for mothers. I'll just have to stop by and check it out, because I would love to see that and experience that. Do you ever get down to South Florida? I need to know this.
Well, we are huge Key West fans, so as south
you know what? We've been down here. We've been down here for 25 months. We have yet to make it to Key West, so that's on our bucket list. The place I really want to go to, that you got to go to Key West to get to, is the Dry Tortugas. It's a national park, which 95% of it is underwater. So yes, I want to get to the Dry Tortugas, and we've mentioned that. I don't know that we're going to do it this year, because later in the year, we got a big trip planned for Australia and New Zealand. So I don't know what's going to be a fit into our schedule this year. I would love to try and make it happen, but we'll see if we can make it, at least squeeze out a weekend or something to get down.
Awesome. Well, Australia is fabulous. I was blessed to be able to go visit there. And New Zealand is apparently fabulous. Our daughter Josie and her husband just got back from there. She is the brand manager for Kim Crawford wine. So shout out to Kim Crawford if there are any Kim Crawford drinkers out there, and Drylands as well, both New Zealand wines.
Okay. Very
Yummies.
good.
They're yummy.
Yes, yes, we're looking forward to this trip. So it's kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity. We've got everything booked. We've got our travel visas, airplane flights. We've got all the places we're going to stay booked. So yeah, we are obviously doing 3 flights while we're there. So yeah,
How
and
long
then
will you be
return.
gone?
It's going to be 2 weeks. So we're
Yeah,
flying into
good.
Sydney. Going to spend a few days in Sydney, then flying up to Cairns to do the Great Barrier Reef,
Mhm.
then flying over to New Zealand.
Cool.
And
Sounds
so
fabulous.
yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, God's earth is beautiful, and we are so blessed to be able to experience it, aren't we?
Yes, we
Yeah.
are.
With all
We
of our
are.
senses and
You
just
know, and my wife and I, we both have traveled outside of the country quite a bit. This will be the first time the two of us have traveled outside the country together.
cool.
Yeah.
That sounds like fun.
Yes. Yes. All right. Well, we're coming up on out here. You have any parting shots or parting wisdom you'd like to
Mm.
offer before we go ahead and call this a day?
Yes, thank you. I just want to remind everybody that you are so loved, that God loves you. You are God's child. If you are going through a hardship, know that you'll go through it. It will not last forever. God is with you. God loves you. If I can pray for you, please contact me on any of my social. You can DM me. I would love and be honored to pray for you. And I also want you to know that you are given special gifts. You are unique. You are beautiful. And the world is waiting. The world is
Yes.
waiting, mamas, for what's coming next for you and dads after those
Yes.
chickies leave the nest.
Yes. And we are all unique. I agree. We are all created uniquely, and every day is unique in and of itself. There's never going to be another day like today. It's not. Today is unique, and embrace those uniqueness, the uniqueness of today, because you are a unique individual. I agree, and that's one of the messages I love to get out too. Well, hey, Leila, I have absolutely enjoyed this conversation. I know it's, yeah, I mean, we have to connect a little more often because I
I
enjoy every
know.
time I have the opportunity to speak with you. I always get great insights. You always inspire me. You always
So
inspire me and get me fired up. But I love it. Yes. And so when you make it to South Florida, let me know. We'll have to connect somehow, some way. I don't get to Illinois much. Sorry. I
that's
can't remember the last time I was in Illinois, to be honest. I think I went for a football game. That may have been it.
well, that's fun.
Um,
This
Yes, I think every time I've been to Illinois, it's been for a football game. Now that I think about it, yes, and
Yep.
in fact, I know it. So yes,
That is good. Yeah, Chicago's a
yes,
beautiful city, especially in the summer.
yes. It is. It is.
Rob,
It's a fun city to go to. It's a very
thank
fun
you.
city to go to.
Thank you
So,
for having
well,
me.
hey, I will thank you for appearing. I appreciate this. Next week, we got 2 Imperfect Action live streams. Stop by. We got Tuesday at 11 o'clock and Wednesday at 2 o'clock. Go ahead and stop by the Imperfect Action live stream. Who knows what we're going to talk about? Who knows? But hey, next Friday is the Virtual Friday Whiskey Hour. Next Thursday, the Polarizing Network. Just look for it on LinkedIn, the Polarizing Network. I'll be speaking there. Go ahead and show up, support me. I would appreciate that. But let's make this a great day. Let's remember that you are unique and this day is unique in and of itself. So peace out.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.